Hello guys, this is Garrett Gatton in Missionary Anthropology class. Today we're going to be talking about why anthropology is vital to the missionary. So I'll start with the story. My friend went to Kenya, Africa, his senior year on a mission trip, and in Kenya there's a lot of similarities, or at least more than one might think. For example, they have school uniforms, like we would, and surprisingly their national language is English. It's important to know about someone else's culture because although there are a lot of similarities, there's also a lot of differences. In Kenya, one might see a woman using the restroom in the street or breastfeeding a child without a cover on in public. One difference in Kenyan culture is that you never want to shake with your left hand because that's the hand that people use to wipe with after going to the bathroom. So you don't want to make that mistake. So to avoid seriously offending someone in this culture, you would need to know about that. In fact, to reach them for the gospel, it is imperative to know their culture. Edwin Smith famously said, "Tact is not enough, nor is love. Tact needs to be based on knowledge. Love there can hardly be without understanding." So to truly show the love of Christ, one needs to make an effort and succeed in observing, learning, and understanding the culture that the people come from. See, there's a number of misunderstandings of what mission work is or what it takes. Many are under the impression that successful mission work just takes a Bible, the right motives, and a little bit of God. Although I don't want to minimize these things because they're essential in successful mission work, there is more to it than this. An example was given that you can have all of these things, a Bible, good motives, excitement, enthusiasm, and go to a foreign country that speaks another language, and you can't communicate to them the very message that you seek to convey. So you see that there is more needed than just those things. There's more to it to reach people. And that's one reason anthropology is so vital to the missionary. Another misconception about mission work is that because of the globalization of the world today, there's no need for ethnographic study because culture is blended. Anthropology is outdated due to technology, economy, and other social institutions. This, however, is a false impression of the world and its cultures. Culture remains very much diverse and intact. For example, the caste system of India, where one is born into a certain trade or social class and women aren't given many liberties, contrasts drastically with the Western mindset, the American culture, which says that someone can make a name for themselves through hard work and determination and perseverance. And women in our country are not only in the working class, but a lot of them have job positions over men. So you see, these are two examples of how culture is very much diverse and still alive today. And so to reach people of other cultures, we need to be familiar with those cultures. You see, the missionary has a need to understand cultures because people make up cultures. So to understand culture is to understand the people that make it up. The goal of a missionary needs to be in focus so that we can see what purpose anthropology has in a successful missionary. The purpose of a missionary is to reach another people group, class, race, ethnicity, or nation with the gospel of Jesus Christ. To do this, the barrier of culture must be understood in order to accomplish this. There are benefits from both anthropologists and missionaries that we can observe that will help us see just how to demonstrate love through observing, learning about, and understanding another culture. An anthropologist has many methods of studying a culture, and one method is known as cultural relativism. The Sociology Guide describes cultural relativism as this: a method whereby different societies or cultures are analyzed objectively without using the values of one culture to judge the worth of another. We cannot possibly understand the actions of other groups if we analyze them in terms of our motives and values. We must interpret their behavior in the light of their motives, habits, and values if we are to understand them. Cultural relativism means that the function and meaning of a trait are relative to its cultural setting. A trait is neither good nor bad in itself. It is good or bad only with reference to the culture in which it is to function. Fur clothing is good in the Arctic but not in the tropics. In some hunting societies, which occasionally face long periods of hunger, to be fat is good. It has real survival value, and fat people are admired. In our society, to be fat is not only unnecessary, but is known to be unhealthful, and fat people are not admired. There's a great power to this type of study and discipline, because as opposed to interpreting another culture through the lens of one's own culture, there's an objectivity that expresses humility, that we're not coming in to change this people group, that their culture is all wrong and we need to conform them to our culture, but to take the humble approach to objectively observe and listen and ask questions as to their culture and their way of life. Missionaries also demonstrate some great qualities that will aid in being genuinely invested in another culture through observation, learning, and understanding. One example would be the fact that many missionaries and many times will live amongst the people they're trying to reach. There is great benefit in this, and when the discipline of anthropology was in its beginnings, it comprised of a lot of educated men sitting around at Oxford reading the reports of other explorers like John Smith, pioneers and missionaries. They did not have first-hand experience in the field with the people that they were writing about. Missionaries have shown this to be a strength. Some examples of great missionaries that contributed this type of data known as ethnographic study will be men like Bartolomé de las Casas, who lived from 1484 to 1566, Bernardino de Sahagún in Latin America, Joseph François Latifau, Gabriel Sargard in North America, Matteo Ricci in China, Roberto do Nubili in India. All examples of missionaries who lived amongst the people and provided data about the culture. So if we take these two components and combine them, both the positive from the anthropological side and the positive from the missionary side, it gives a powerful blend that makes a successful missional anthropologist. Looking at a culture with as little bias as possible and actually placing yourself in their shoes gives tremendous understanding into their way of life, their habits, their thought patterns, their values, their family structure, and the list goes on. Living amongst the people brings tremendous fruit because it shows humility to adhere to the lifestyle and practices of the people trying to be reached. It can bring down many walls that will open up more opportunities. So now I want us to look at the biblical examples of anthropology being used to reach people. Anthropology being employed to show genuine love and care for others so that they could be reached for Christ. One example is when Jesus was at the well with the Samaritan woman. In John chapter 4, verses 1 through 30, Jesus uses cultural understanding to know the difference in where the Jews worshipped in Jerusalem and where the Samaritans worshipped on a mountain. He uses this knowledge to display to this woman that worshiping God no longer happens in a physical location, but it's a spiritual matter. Another example would be Paul in Acts 17, when he goes into the city of Athens. As he walked around, he was disturbed by all the false gods and saw one that was entitled, "To the Unknown God." Well, he proceeds to use this as a segue into the gospel to share with them about this unknown God who created all things. So we even see in the Bible Both Jesus and Paul are two examples of men who used anthropology, who used culture, the culture of the people they were trying to reach, to communicate the message of Christ. And so, in conclusion, what people need is to have others taking an interest in them. Many times we treat people like a means to an end or like a project. When we are slow to speak and quick to listen, then it shows there's a genuine love. Love does not insist on its own way. We are to put others ahead of ourselves. You see, the practice of anthropology is not just a way to learn more about people, but it is a way to love people. Thank you.